Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 138, Beyond the Scale, Reassessing Healthy Weight Metrics. Hi, everyone. This is Shelly Rael, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and the founder and host of Real World Nutrition. So, I keep addressing this topic, or I often address this topic of how the scale is lying to you, how it doesn't tell you the whole story about your health, it does tell you the truth about your weight, but what does that entail when you're measuring something on a scale? And in pursuing health and wellness, it's common for us to fixate on that single number, that reading on the scale, or what a lot of us call the bathroom scale because we do it with no clothes on. But healthy weight encompasses far more than this number. Now, I recently did have an episode 135, on why fitness matters more than the number on the scale. And that's just a couple episodes or a few weeks ago. But I have a link to that in the show notes. And I address ways to assess progress on your fitness journey past the number on the scale. And in that episode, I mentioned changes in body composition. So I wanted to address that in this episode a little bit more deeply and what that is. Now, bear with me as I'm going to mention the dreaded BMI, or the body mass index. And I need to address it. It's a foundational metric for assessing weight relative to height. And we must recognize its limitations. So the classification of individuals, or it classifies individuals into categories such as overweight, different classes of obesity, so-called healthy weight, and even underweight. And this is all done based on that BMI. And that can overlook crucial nuances. So I often bring up people like Dwayne Johnson or Arnold Schwarzenegger, both when they were in their primes. They had substantial muscle mass, and it would register or could register as overweight or even in a classification of obesity strictly by BMI standards, despite having minimal body fat, again, at the height of their fitness. I'm not saying that they're not fit anymore, but we know that Arnold Schwarzenegger is getting older, and I can't address that anymore. But I do want to say that BMI offers a starting point for some people, but it's not the sole determinant of one's health status. So, as I mentioned in the previous episode, we can have the same person, or every person who's the same height and the same weight, or that same BMI, regardless of their age, regardless of their sex, regardless of their fitness. Now, I just say BMI does have its place when looking at individuals in a hospital setting. We flag for various things if they're underweight by various standards, and that's not going to be addressed here, but it is a screening tool, but not even close to the only thing that we look at. Look at blood work and health history and so many other things. But let me talk a little bit more about body composition, because that's what I want to address here. So more appropriate compared to BMI is evaluating body composition, which encompasses not only fat, or what we refer to as fat mass, but also fat-free mass, which includes muscle, organs, bones, other non-fat tissues. And there's various methods for assessing body fat percentage, and each has its own unique advantages and considerations related to accuracy and even accessibility. Now, I want to address fat mass a little bit more because some people have this idea that the lower the better which is not always the case. We do have what we refer to as essential fat, and that varies in male versus female. But the essential fat, which protects our organs, cushions our joints, and has that layer to help keep us warm under our skin. Excess fat is what we are looking for more often. So let me talk about the different ways to assess body composition. What many people may be more familiar with is a skinfold measurement. And this is popularly known as the pinch test. And this method involves measuring the thickness of subcutaneous fat, or the fat layer under our skin, using specialized calipers. And it's feasible for some, but accurate interpretation really requires expertise and high quality equipment. So let me explain this a little bit more. High quality skinfold calipers, these things are heavy and they cost several $100s. And those who are doing this measurement and using this measurement, taking the measurements for you, should have hundreds or even thousands of measurements under their belt. It takes a lot of practice to do this accurately. It takes a lot of practice to do it well. And it's not so important here, but it's the parts of the body where they're doing these measurements is minimum of 3 locations, and in some cases 7. It's different between male and female, because on male, they'll measure at the pec, on the chest, and on female, you don't want to do that because there's naturally going to be more fat, and you don't want people pinching you there anyway. So I just said those high-quality skinfold calipers are important. And then using these $10 or $20 plastic calipers won't do it for a couple reasons. One, they're not that accurate. I've seen them where they would come free with various DVDs or videos back in the old days, and you can't measure it on yourself. It's impossible to measure anything accurately on yourself with this method. Now, another method is referred to as the hydrostatic weighing, or some people call it the dunk tank. Not exactly how that goes, but it's pretty similar. And this is, at one point, was considered the gold standard. So hydrostatic weighing determines body composition by being completely submerged underwater, measuring weight while underwater. And it's a process. I'll just tell you that. I've done it many times in the past because I used to work at a university where this was what they did for research a lot of times, and they needed subjects. So this is really, again, a gold standard, but the accessibility of it, very limited. Where I live, we only have one in the whole state. It's not practical, and some people just would not tolerate going underwater in the way you have to go under the water. It can be problematic, and it takes a lot of patience to do it. So again, it's not practical to do it for a widespread audience. It also requires an additional initial test to measure what we call the residual lung capacity. So even when we blow all the air out of our lungs, there's still going to be a little bit of air in there. And so they need to measure that as well. I'm doing an overview of how this hydrostatic underwater weighing works. It's got a lot of things involved in it. So if it's ever something you want to consider, they'll be giving you all kinds of information prior to testing to get that done properly. All right, next up is the DEXA scan. And this is usually used for assessing bone density. And the DEXA stands for dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. Boy, that's a mouthful. This DEXA, it gives a comprehensive body composition analysis. And despite its high accuracy, very high accuracy, the cost and limited availability are pretty challenging for widespread use. This is often reserved for research and it's less widespread for the general population. This takes thousands, it's a machine that costs thousands of dollars. And then you have to have somebody who knows how to use this machine, which again is thousands of dollars to have these individuals trained and employed to operate the machine. So again, usually used for research purposes, not widespread use for the general public. Another method is called the bod pod, and this is air displacement. And the bod pod entails sitting inside an enclosed capsule and assessing body composition similar to the hydrostatic method, but without the water. So the enclosed capsule, if you're old enough to understand this, it always reminded me of the egg from Mork and Mindy, Mork's spaceship. Except for this does have a window, but this enclosed capsule can be limiting for individuals who have claustrophobia, those who are very tall, or those who have very high body weight. The capsule can only hold people within a certain size limit. And the reason I know this in part is because one of my colleagues back when I worked at the university was over 6.5 feet tall, and his legs were too long that the door couldn't be closed properly. But overall, it is a user-friendly option to monitor body composition, but it really is not portable. So it is one in the past where there would be, knew there was bod pods in several locations, but again, you had to go there. Now, another method is probably the one that most people are familiar with. They just may not know what it's called, but it's the bioelectrical impedance analysis, or BIA. So bioelectrical impedance is, as I said, the one most people are familiar with, and these devices measure electrical conductivity through the body. And this could range from your home scale. If you have a scale at home, you've got the metal things on the scale that are conducting electricity through your feet. Some may have handles on it on your home scale, and that's your hands and your feet. But really, the equation is quite complex, and it's not really relevant. But here's the deal. The electrical current goes through your body, and depending on how fast that current goes through, it will travel faster through water than it does through fat. And there's, again, more to this that's not really necessary for you to know for this, but these are pretty portable and accessible ways of measuring body composition. So, like I mentioned, your home scale. I have a handheld device that looks like a game controller or kind of like a pilot's steering wheel. I don't know what that's called. But it's pretty small, something I could stick in my backpack. When I worked at the university, we had 6 of them, and we'd be able to go around campus for various events. So there was an old school, there is still available, but probably not as widely used, where you had an electrode attached to your foot and ankle, and another one attached to your hand and your wrist, and you would lay down, and it would do it through your whole body. If you're doing a handheld device, it's really only doing your upper body. If you're doing a scale where you're standing on it, that's usually only doing your lower body. Not so important overall, but there's a newer, more advanced and more accurate approach from InBody, InBody, and I'll provide a link there as well in the show notes, that measures all aspects of the body, but it includes standing on a specialized scale, and you're holding handlebars or handles that have electrodes on it. This method is widely accessible, and several places in your area may offer it. I know, a little over 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, I was involved in an early research study for this, and it was able to tell me the body fat percentage of different parts of my body. So my right arm was a little bit leaner than my left, like very little difference, and my right leg was a little bit leaner than my left leg. But it was interesting to see this. Highly irrelevant overall. And no, I am not right-handed. That was the weird part. But that's just various methods. And I'm not promoting any one of these over others, just mentioning these various methods. Now, I want to emphasize this. We want to have a personalized approach to this. So it's crucial that healthy weight is not one size fits all, because we know individual factors like age and sex, ethnicity, even athletic background can influence what is considered, quote, ideal body composition. So I want to emphasize this. Rather than fixating on what is a societal norm or standardized benchmarks, we want to look at and prioritize personal progress. So when I would do these various methods or be part of this group that we would do these various methods, people would want to know, where do I stand? What does this mean? Well, first of all, yes, we had these standards, but when we were doing it for various health events, we would say it's not as important as where you stand on this. It's how can you change it if you need to. So improving that number, and that may not mean that you're getting to a different category, but you're changing your body composition, improving your muscle mass. And I want to emphasize this as well. When I was doing a weight loss program, I had one of the individuals who was working so hard and so frustrated. Over the 12 weeks, she, quote, only lost 7 pounds on the scale. But when we measured her body composition, we did it at the beginning and at the end, it turns out she had lost, I can't remember, it doesn't really matter, but something like 16 or 18 pounds of fat and had gained muscle mass of about 9, 11 pounds. And so her she lost a lot of body fat, built up some muscle mass. And again, no, muscle does not weigh more than fat. It just takes up less space. So she had lost a lot more fat than the scale had told her. So much so, she was crying in my office. She was like, I was working so hard and nothing was happening. And so really a lot was happening. And that is a healthier approach. Exercising appropriately, changing the body composition, and that number on the scale may not change in a significant way. So relying solely on the scale to gauge progress overlooks that multifaceted nature of health. And again, back in episode 135, I addressed some of those other things. So many ways to assess health, and these other ways of assessing body composition can help us understand our bodies better. So again, the number on the scale offers a snapshot of weight status, but we want to view our health through a broader lens and understand these nuances of weight and health and fitness levels so we can redefine our perception of healthy weight. So I hope this was informative and helpful for you to get a better understanding. If you have more questions or would like to talk to me about how you can do things to help with changing your body composition, I can't measure it for you, but help you with approaches with your eating habits as well as your exercise habits to make changes. Go on over to the show notes and click on that, schedule that free 30-minute introductory call with me, and we can talk. All right, everyone, that is it for this week's episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. You take care, and bye for now.